Are you a technician who wants to set yourself apart? Then the Trusted Technician podcast is for you. I'm Derek Hoferter, coach and trainer at SBE, and on this podcast, we will have experienced HVAC coaches and trainers, as well as top-performing technicians, all sharing their tips and strategies to help you be more successful. Welcome back to another episode of the Trusted Technician podcast. This is Coach Derek, and we've got a little bit of a different episode today that I'm pretty excited about. And normally we're hearing right from technicians who are currently out in the field and currently, following a process, and we want tips and tricks from what's going on right now in the field. Today's episode, we're going to get a little different perspective. We've got two of our SBE coaches and trainers here, two of our service specialists, and both of them were previously out in the field. So they've got that perspective of being out in the field, doing that job, and now making that transition to service manager and being in charge of technicians and helping technicians from inside the company. And now they're here at SBE, coaching a lot of different technicians at a lot of different companies and a lot of different regions of the US. And now they have that perspective as well. So I want to welcome Lewis and Zach to the podcast. Let's get some quick intros from you guys. Lewis, you want to go first? Just give us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Yeah, for having us on today. So I came out of HVAC, like I said, I was a comfort consultant, turned into sales manager, turned into service manager, turned into overseeing operations, all sorts of different hats. But I've got a long history in-home sales from different types of construction avenues as well. So straight out of the field, but straight out of customers' homes and dealing with all the things that everybody's dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Nice. Zach?
Yeah, glad to be here too. So my background, my father owned an HVAC business. So I started there when I was about 14, riding around in the truck, learning the trade as a technician and installer. And then from there, I kind of bounced around to different states, Virginia and Florida, being a lead tech for a company, a service manager for another one, and then eventually a general manager. So kind of have a wide variety of steps I've taken within HVAC businesses.
Nice. And that's perfect for both of you guys in the conversation that we're going to have today, of being able to see it from both sides of the training side, the in the field side. So I'm really excited about this. So I just want to start out kind of with the question of, what do you wish that maybe back when you're in the field you knew that you now as a coach and as a trainer know? Like, is there anything that if you could kind of go back in time with that knowledge that you feel like would really have helped you back when you were in the field? I don't know, Lewis, you want to go first on that?
Is all of it the right answer?
It could be.
I was very fortunate that I had sales training from other companies that followed a sales process similar in a lot of ways. And I almost think I forgot a little bit about that coming into HVAC, on how long it really takes for someone to understand and adapt and adopt and follow a process day in and day out, to really live it from one end to the other. Because it's really, really easy, especially in this industry. Like, it turns from I'm bored to, oh gosh, how am I going to get everything done in the day? Literally overnight. And it's really easy to fall back to your old ways, to just put on the gas pedal and go. So I think coming into this, if I would have just recognized a little bit on how long it really takes for someone to learn something brand new from start to finish and be able to implement it on their day-to-day, that would have been super helpful.
Zach, how about you? If you could take what you know now and travel back in time, what would that be?
Yeah, so the number one thing I'd probably take back would be slowing down and asking questions, right, to the homeowner instead of presenting. I know, let's just take IAQ, for example. If I were to walk into someone's house and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, I noticed your coil was dirty. We have this great product called an iWave. We can go in, we can put it in. It's going to do this, this, and this for your house. I had a whole spiel about it, right? And looking back on how you can ask those questions, actually see if there's pain without having to feel awkward in presenting and feeling like you had to sell, right? You had that pressure from management of, hey, go out there and sell. But what do I know about selling, right? I'm a technician. I'm not a salesperson.
Yeah. I could definitely see that one of, you feel like you just had your collection of presentations versus actually finding out if they needed one or not, or even wanted one or not, or had it, paying for it, for sure. So I'm curious from your guys' experience, like, why is it that a lot of technicians or a lot of HVAC companies, until they kind of like get it and get into it and build those habits, seem to have this just aversion to training in some ways. Like there's a difference here of what I'm talking about too, not like the technical training of, learning how to do the repairs, but like this idea of kind of communications training, sales training. Why does there seem to be kind of an initial either we don't need that, or it's not going to work, or we don't have time for it? Like, why does it seem like there's a lot of roadblocks? Because most companies don't do it. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
I think you actually you nailed it. I think it's time. I think normally in this business, because things change overnight, a lot of companies, a lot of contractors, a lot of technicians, they're looking for, I don't want to say a quick fix, but like, what can I do immediately that's going to change something? And I think the thought behind it is, let's teach them a process, or let's get them some sort of sales training, or let's train them. But again, the realization is that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. We can come to a company and teach their techs, or they can come to a regional training, and 2 days later they have so much more knowledge when they left than when they came. But does it mean that they're going to go out on their very first call, be able to apply it all, and all of a sudden have this massive change in revenue or outlook or anything like that? And I think that's just really what it is time. They think it's quick and easy, and it really is kind of like a slow cooker. It just takes time.
So it's a piece of that then, just like a lack of patience of we're hurting now, we need the results now. The training is not going to give us the immediate, there's going to be some investment of time into it. And so instead of just doing it and then getting the payoff, it's just like, well, let's just avoid it because it's not an immediate return. Is there something there about patience?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look at this day and age. Everything that we do is all out of convenience, and it's because it happens faster and quicker and easier, right? Amazon Prime. Right? If you're in the right location, you can order it today. It'll be here at the end of the day or tomorrow at the latest. And yeah, it's a lack of patience, a lack of time, or just a realization that it won't happen overnight. It might not happen by the end of the week. It's going to be a slow process, but it's also the time investment of what you have to do after the training, the constant review of the technician's notes, the constant follow-up from someone internally, whether it's the owner or a service manager or a CSR, whoever is following up with the technicians. It's a constant practice. It's just like learning a new sport or a new activity. Like, you're not good at it first day. You didn't step into the batter's box and hit a 80-mile-an-hour fastball. You started on a tee, and then you started with a lob, and then it was underhand, and then it was right. There was the progression. You put him in the cage at 80 miles an hour. I'm swinging and missing. I'm going to get frustrated, and well, I'm just not a good baseball player.
Kind of reminds me of maybe someone who hasn't like worked out or done anything for a long time, and they go and do like one workout, and they're like, "Why don't I have abs yet?"
Yeah.
Like, this is clearly wrong.
Well,
the workout clearly doesn't. The workout clearly doesn't work. I was promised a result, and it clearly doesn't work.
Yeah, I don't have abs, and I'm too sore. I can't even go to the bathroom. Like, this is not for me.
Yeah, Zach, what did you see out in the field of kind of this feeling about training?
Yeah, I'd say this is the balance between when I was in the field and kind of when I was the service manager, right? So it's really when I was in the field, I wouldn't say it's so much time, right? I think it's what do I already know and how can I apply it? So when I jumped in that service manager seat, I would have people under me and say, hey, this guy can't do this well. Let me teach him how to do it. So I'd go out in the field, teach him how to do the technical thing, or teach him how to talk to someone or present something, but it's my way of doing it, right? It's never the authentic way that person's going to be able to present that product or talk about it. So I want them to do it my way. It worked for me, but I don't think that technically works for everyone, right? We don't have a sense of how to train our technicians because a lot of times the person stepping up who is the owner or the service manager used to be a technician, right? And they weren't receiving that training. So I feel like a lot of times it's this ladder that builds up within these companies of, okay, let's raise this person up, but they never quite have the training to be in that seat, right? I never probably had the full training to be in that service manager seat or had the training to be a great sales technician.
Yeah. So how do we change this? How do we change the mindset of either like the service manager, the owner, that this is necessary, it's consistent, it's ongoing, the payoff is going to come at different phases, but some of the big payoff is in the future. And then also from the technician to want training, to crave training, because we all see this as trainers. We go in, we teach a class, the high performers are there, right? Like, for instance, I go out to the East Coast every fall, every spring. There's certain cities I go back to, and the high performers are always there. They're back in there, and it's like they're probably the one in the class who needs it the least, but they're always there because they just want it. They couldn't imagine not having that opportunity. So how do we start to change this?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of just reflecting on what you're doing and not so much blaming the situation or aspects you're put into, right? Because a lot of times as a technician, I remember be out in the field and something wouldn't go right. I'd say, oh man, that's the dispatcher's fault, or oh man, that's the service manager's fault, or that's their problem. Whereas when I'm sitting in that service manager's seat and that technician's out there who doesn't do something, I'm sitting there, why didn't he do that, right? It's this balance of we got to really take it responsibility on ourselves and say, hey, do I need this training? How can I make myself better? Instead of pushing the blame onto someone else. I think it's a very common thing that as a tech I did, and I know others did as well.
Would that include putting the blame on the actual customer, the homeowner? Well, like they're just whatever, or I'm just getting the bad calls. I'm going to all the homes where they don't want to spend money, they don't want to do anything, and it's them, not I don't have the training, I don't have the process, I don't have the questions to handle this type of person.
Absolutely, Derek. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've probably said, oh, that customer doesn't have any money. When looking back now, they probably had some money, right? They could probably afford something that I would bring up or what I brought up, but it was probably just the way I brought it up that caused that objection from that customer.
Yeah, because if you don't see it as you, why would you change? All right, it's
Exactly.
everyone else that needs to change. Lewis, what were you thinking?
I think one thing that's really never done from, I don't want to say the bottom, but like from the technician level is it's your boots on the ground. Like you are in the trenches, you're in the thick of it. The weight is on your shoulders to go out and fix things and generate revenue and like do all of these things. But you really don't understand the 30,000-foot view of what the company, what the industry, what like the whole big picture is. They're just not given that opportunity to see it. What I mean is the realization, if I don't sell this homeowner a maintenance agreement, how does that affect the company down the road in 6 months? How does that, who does it affect? Who doesn't it affect? Does the CSR have someone to call a couple of times down the road? Do I have an appointment 6 months down the road? If I don't tell the homeowner or get them involved and let them know everything that's going on with their system and then something breaks in 3 months, who are they blaming? Just the general picture of how the company really works and how it's all like a big giant circle of life, and where the technician fits into that circle and how many lives and roles it impacts. Because that's real, but I don't feel like they're given that opportunity. It's just like, here's a van, you have your tools, you know what you know, like just go do it. Like high five, you're awesome. But they don't realize, they're not given the opportunity to realize who and what it impacts and why. I think that's the biggest thing, is the whys behind everything.
So the training should not just be about what to do. It needs to be about why we're doing it as well, giving them the whole context and perspective of the big picture.
Yeah, 100%. The why is the most important. And in reality, it should be the whys for everybody. So the people who are running CSR, like there's the CSR manager or just one CSR, he or she should know the information that we're teaching the techs. The owner should know this information. The owner should know what we're teaching the CSRs. Everyone should be filled in on what the big picture is and how it all works together, because you'll never have any cohesiveness throughout your different departments. It'd be like what Zach said, like everyone's blaming everybody else. Well, the salesperson didn't get all this information. I can't put the system in. I don't know what to do. Everyone's always going to be blaming each other. But if everyone got a chance to look at the 30,000 foot view, I think that would just open up their eyes to what it's really all about, the why behind everything.
Yeah, if we are in the field and we are getting training, what are the things that need to be in place to support that? Like obviously understanding the why is a piece of that, understanding the functions, but either from like the technician perspective of needing a coach, almost like an athlete, from like the service manager perspective, from you as a trainer perspective, like what needs to all be in place around training, right? Because I think we all agree as trainers that if all you did was sign the technician up for a class, that's kind of scratching the surface. right? And the likelihood of it being fully adopted and fully used is going to be low. So what is the whole kind of ecosystem around training that needs to be in place?
Yeah, I think number one is the schedule you're going to stick to is the most important thing, and then what's going to be in that schedule, right? Whether it's going to be, hey, we're going to have a service tech meeting, we're going to have an install meeting, ride-alongs, whatever you want to put in that schedule, but just making sure it's in your calendar and you're going to stick to it. Derek, I can't tell you, I've started so many training programs as a service tech and a general manager that get brushed over when it comes to summertime because we just get too busy, right? Oh, we're going to do role plays on Tuesdays, but we never did role plays on Tuesdays, right? I'm going to go on ride-alongs on Thursday. Oh, but this guy's got this call. We can sell a system here. We're not going to do the ride-along, right? It just, if you can stick to it, how much more impactful would the rest of that summer season have been, right? I probably could have generated much more revenue from my guys and generated more revenue myself by just sticking to the training regimen that was in place.
Mm. Yeah. Lewis?
An accountability process, different way of explaining what Zach just said, but I think an implementation plan is going to be huge. We can't give them 2 days of information and expect them to go out and apply it immediately and commit it to memory. So there needs to be someone who is going to be holding them accountable, coaching them through it, but helping them apply it and implement it into their daily routine, right? For this week, let's just focus on the call ahead, like the very first piece. Let's get that down pat. And let's move on and add the next piece and then add the next piece. And in our practice, we're practicing it from start to finish, but you're applying it piece by piece, skill by skill. Otherwise, it's going to be way too overwhelming and we're going to fall back to our old ways because it was just easier, or that's just what we're used to, muscle memory. Customer's going to give you a little bit of resistance and you're going to go, well, that stuff doesn't work. I'll just do what I did before. I'll go back to present mode, as Zach was saying. So I think how we're going to implement it and apply it is a mistake that is commonly made.
You both have been service managers, right, / sales managers, and in that seat with the perspective of also being in the field, maybe reporting to a service manager, a sales manager, and now as a trainer who works very closely with service managers and sales managers. I know that's one of the toughest positions in any HVAC or plumbing company. It's one of the toughest because it's kind of like everything kind of gets put on that and that person in a way of a lot of times I see they're dispatching, they're invoicing, they're troubleshooting, they're install coordinating, they're ordering parts, they're ordering supplies, like it doesn't end. And I think in there, maybe like the purpose of that position kind of gets lost. So in your guys' opinion, what is the most impactful or most important thing for somebody in that service manager, sales manager position for them to do, especially as it relates to what we've been talking about?
I think for me, the most important thing that they could do is basically know their staff, know their technicians, know their departments so well that they can tell immediately when something's off. I don't mean that by like babysitting, but I mean keeping your finger on the pulse at all times. The flip side of that is if you're not constantly doing check-ins, if you don't know your technicians well, if you don't really know what they're saying, how they're saying it, how they're doing it, it's really easy for a couple of weeks to go by and all of a sudden you see an average ticket drop or sales are down and now you're scratching your head and everyone's leaning on you like, hey, what's going on? And you don't have answers. But if your finger is on the pulse, you're doing constant check-ins, ride-alongs, you're really focusing on each technician on exactly where they are in their process and their skill level and how they're representing the company in the homes, you can tell the slightest little thing, just like a coach with an athlete. Right? A good coach can spot an athlete just having a bad day and pull them aside and say, hey, let's just call it a day. Something's off. Go home and rest. And I think that's what the good service manager can do is realize that, hey, someone's either struggling, just not having a good time, something's going wrong, and be able to pull them aside, either help them or let's just move on to the next thing so that we can maximize our opportunity. And that just keeps everybody else off the service manager's back, right? No one's going to complain if everyone's doing good.
It's true. Zach?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is Lewis makes a good point in that he's in charge of service, right? We have him doing this dispatching job, we have him doing this job of ordering parts and all that. But when it comes down to it, service people are his guys, right? So a lot of times that service manager has transitioned from the field or another spot where they were a revenue producer, and now they're not in that position anymore. So what is their purpose, right? How do they track how they're doing well? And I think really identifying that what those guys are bringing in is your average ticket, right?
Mm.
So it's you don't have an average ticket anymore. You don't have a goal, but their goals are now your goals, and the purpose is to get them to there, right? So I think it's really the consistency of, tracking where they're at, having those conversations with them of, hey, how do we progress, looking over their numbers, whether it be in Service Titan or the SBE dashboard, whatever you use, but being able to identify what's this person good at, what they're not, and how can I help them bring it to the next level, right? Or how can I take what they're good at and share that with the rest of the team instead of just saying, oh, he's killing it, let him go out there. You can always bring that person up another step.
Yeah. At different points in our conversation and throughout this episode, you both have mentioned ride-alongs. And ride-alongs are, like, to me, it's hard for me to try to fathom why a company would not be doing ride-alongs. The comparison that I would have if you're an athletic coach or a sport team coach and you never watched the game, right? You just went into the locker room and you're like, hey guys, here's the plan for today. We're going to do this. Make sure you do this, do this, do this. All right, see ya. And then like the coach didn't sit on the sideline for the game, didn't watch the game, didn't review footage of the game, just kind of looked at the score afterwards and made all their assumptions and judgments on the score. And as someone who follows sports, the score only tells like a little bit of the story. It's actually watching the game, and now you can be like, oh, we worked on this in practice and they didn't do it, or this isn't being implemented. The ride along is the only way to actually know what's going on. So why is there such a resistance? And I get the the time perspective, but it seems like technicians resist it. Like, no, I don't want it. And the service managers resist it. Like, it's not going to be worth it, or I don't have time for it. But in my mind, it just seems like that is like the number one thing to actually, Lewis, you said the pulse, to actually know what's going on is to go and watch your techs actually run calls. So what's the disconnect here? Why is the ride along the thing that rarely ever happens in an organization?
I'd say the service techs don't like it because they feel like there's going to be some sort of judgmental about them, right? They're in a van alone all day long, and that's what they're used to, right? They want to go in there, get their job done, and do what they do. But as soon as you stick another person in that van, it becomes uncomfortable, right? It's like, hey, this is my van, this is my, workspace. And then they're in the house with you, watching you, and you just, kind of have this sense of, well, is this person gonna make, a judgment call? Is my job on the line if I screw this word up? And it becomes uncomfortable where it's just trying to help and coach and train you instead.
Well, Zach, it's interesting what you're saying, because it's basically like everything about it is negative. Like there's no possible positive result that's going to come from this. I'm going to get criticized. I'm going to get punished. I'm going to get disciplined. I'm going to get judged. And Zach, maybe there's even a history where only the poor performers who are about to get fired get a ride along. Right. So is that kind of all wrapped up in that idea of it?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, right? The tech doesn't see it as a positive unless it's been done in a way before where it's been shown as a positive, right? How can they go in there, transform their language to actually be a better revenue producer, be better at their job, and put more money in their pocket? There has to be a benefit for the service technician too, and there is if the ride along's done properly.
And it's just the problem is most are not done properly.
Yeah.
Right?
I'll add to that in the fact that it's really weird in the truck if they're not used to it at all in the office. So I think it has to start in the office. It has to start in the training room or the break room or something, wherever you're going to hold meetings. They have to be okay and open to coaching in a one-on-one environment, and well before you hop in the van or the truck with me and we go into the homeowner, because the technician's looking at it like, this is my world. Now, you're in my world. I'm in the driver's seat. I run the show, and now you're just introducing somebody else who's there, and you put up some defense. So if you can practice that in the office and help them realize that this is really just as coaching, it's a teamwork event. I'm going to help you. You're going to help me. We're going to help each other get better. And then now we can just take it to the road and it doesn't seem as awkward. But it's real awkward if the first time you try to coach somebody is while they're doing their stuff. You know, we used baseball earlier, like try to coach a hitter from the batter's box. How's that going to work? Try to coach the quarterback after he takes the snap. Like it's just not going to happen. So that's what the ride along is like if the technician has never been through any kind of internal coaching.
Yeah, I'm getting
super weird and it doesn't work.
I'm getting imagery of, like the DMV worker doing the driver's license test and just sitting there with a clipboard.
Yeah.
And right. And just like, just, and then like writing notes, then, and writing notes. Yeah. I'm getting that imagery. So knowing what you know now as a trainer and as a coach, if you were back in that service manager, sales manager seat and you were going to do ride-alongs, how would you do them? Like, how should ride-alongs be done?
Depending on how many techs you have, I would say a bare minimum once a month per tech. If you have a lot of techs, that might actually work. If you have a small handful, 3 to 6, once a month may not be enough, but right, once a week is going to be it's going to be too much. It's going to get annoying. So you just got to try to find a rhythm of what's going to work for the individual. Kind of like you said earlier, like the high performer, he may need less. Maybe he only needs once a month because you're doing it internally. But maybe the newer guys, maybe it is once a week until they get, up to speed. But it needs to be more of an aid instead of a hindrance, right? It's not, we're not there to critique you or be the DMV guy with the clipboard. We're there to help you progress. Hey, let's go run this call together. Let's go see what we can make out of it. Or introduce something new. You get a maintenance guy who's never really ran demand before, right? No, let's go together. He's going to be nervous. I'll make it a little bit easier on you. So that cadence just needs to vary upon their skill level, how many guys you have. But I would say once a month at a bare minimum.
I would say another important piece to that is just setting up what's going to be gone over beforehand, right? Because if you're just to hop in a truck with your technician and say, hey, we're going to go out here to this job, I'm going to watch you, we're going to do a ride along. He's going to be like, oh, what are you looking at? What are you looking for? What's wrong, right? Maybe having a checklist or a conversation, building a checklist together with your team of what a ride along is going to consist of, right? What do we look for? What do they want to work on in their practices and that they want you to look for in that ride along, right? Certain questions that you want to ask, the call ahead, how it's functioning, how you're forming it. But I think setting that up beforehand really gives an idea of, this is what we're going to do, right? It's not some sort of mystery. There's not this owner, service manager in my truck looking at me, writing down about, how my shirt's not tucked in or whatever, right? There's a clear identifiable pattern of what needs to be done and what's expected.
Yeah, because really that fear we were talking about before of it just being negative, there's going to be a negative consequence associated with it. Really, though, the only consequence should just be more training, right? Or more coaching, unless there's just, we're not talking about just like the huge violations of some sort, right? Where they almost like burned someone's house down or, I think that's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about, if they're not completely asking all the right questions, it's not a punishment. It's just, hey, let's do a little extra time practicing it, right? Or maybe I've always kind of felt like the ultimate ride along structure is whoever the trainer is, the internal coach, whether it's the service manager or whether it's a senior tech that's going to kind of be administrating the ride along, should kind of have the ability to go first, right? Of, hey, let's do some ride alongs today. We're going to do 2 calls. I'm going to go first. On the first one, I want you to kind of watch, like Lewis, kind of what you said, do it with me, but I'll take the lead role and I'll kind of demonstrate what I'm looking for today in the ride along. After the call, we'll debrief. You can ask me questions. We can go over things, and then you'll take the second one, and we'll kind of see, what questions I have for you, or how it went afterwards. And really, like the only threat of a consequence is we'll just do some more coaching. We'll do some more training. Am I kind of on the right track here?
100%. I think that can be learned too on if that's how you actually train your new technicians, is to do ride-alongs with the senior tech, but with the same concept of, right, you're just not sitting there taking notes. Like, this is my role. This is your role. You can do this. I'll do this. We'll talk about it. And we'll talk about it at the end. So this way, when they get into their own truck, it's not uncommon to have someone in the passenger seat.
Yeah. Zach, if it's been years since a ride along has ever happened, that's the hardest one, is that first one to do, right? Because it's like, this is weird. Why are we doing this? So if you were back in there, and you're like, hey, I'm the service manager now. We've never done ride-alongs, or it's been years. Can we again walk me through a little bit of like what the order would be of things that you would do to implement that?
Yeah, so order obviously, right? Like we talked about earlier, get a schedule in place, right? Pick a specific day or set it on the CRM of when you're going to be out there with the guys. But beyond that, setting up either with them or on your own what that ride along is going to consist of, whether you use the SBE ride along checklist or whether it's your own company's. And then from there, have a conversation with the guys about it. Be authentic. Hey, we're going to do this, but just for coaching and training purposes, right? Let them know this isn't to take you down a notch or get you in trouble, because it takes that awkwardness out of the air, right? When you sit down in that van and just make it fun is a big thing, right? This isn't some sort of, hey, you got a 0 out of 10 on your ride along checklist. What the heck? It's okay, well, maybe next time we won't say that in front of the customer, right? And we'll just laugh about it, right? But taking that moment and then being able to coach and train off of it for the next month until your next ride along, and then go back and see the improvement and see how the tech feels from, hey, I actually did improve from this. I made steps forward. Instead of doing that ride along, having that checklist and then sliding it to the side and going back to the service manager and start ordering parts, dispatching, whatever other hat you're trying to wear.
Yeah.
I,
Go ahead, Lewis.
I was gonna say, I think Zach, you hit on a really, really important thing, is make it fun. And I think for some guys, being in the truck by themselves is like their time. It's like their quiet time. But for others, it can get boring and a little bit lonely, always being by yourself. Really never having, like, you might be able to, call a buddy or two in between calls, or call another technician and, you know, kind of complain or talk about some things or whatever. But I used to do a lot of ride-alongs in both directions. I had new trainees with me all the time, and then I always had a manager once a month, once every couple of weeks, and those were just so much more fun. You have someone to talk to, you have someone to catch up with. It doesn't always have to be about work. It can really be just about getting to know somebody else who's in the same business. And even if they're at a lower skill or maybe even a higher skill, like, there's always something to learn. However, not everybody's going to think the same way, that these are going to be fun. So if you make it fun, especially if you're the manager, like, those things need to be fun. It's not all work. Like, let's go grab lunch afterwards. Like, let me take you to lunch, or I don't know. It needs to be enjoyable for them to actually want to do it again, but easily overlooked, right? Just sometimes it's always about business. Oh,
Yeah.
we didn't sell anything. Let's go back to the office. You need more training. Man, that wasn't fun. I don't want that to happen again. Like, next ride along, I'm like, oh, I think I'm sick. I don't feel so good. I'm calling out. I'm
Yeah.
avoiding that one.
The perspective shift, right, is probably like that biggest battle around it. And yeah, sometimes it's just got to do a few that are maybe not going to be the greatest ones ever, because the person doing the ride along also needs reps on doing ride alongs. Yeah. So I think just everyone on board, and probably the person who's going to do the ride along, more from the service manager or mentor role, should probably just be transparent. This is my first time doing it from this side too, or I haven't done this too. It's probably not going to be great on my side either, and be open to feedback also, right? Of coaching and training from the tech, maybe, of how could this have been better? How could this have been more helpful? How could this have been more fun or more enjoyable? And there should be coaching kind of going on both ways, right? Because both people need to get better at it. The person doing the ride along needs to get better at giving ride alongs.
I used
All
to tell
right,
my
so
guys, today's gonna be easier. I'll be your gopher. Just tell me what you need. I'll go get it.
yeah,
Like, you keep working. Like, you don't need to go back to the truck. Where is it?
let's
I'll get
just
it.
be helpful, and get some reps. To get better at it, you got to do it. You got to get some reps. Okay, we got to wrap this up, guys. We've been going for a while, and I feel like we could keep going, but we do need to wrap it up. So just as a final kind of thought, pooling all of your perspective together of being out in the field and service manager and now as a trainer, could you just kind of distill down to maybe like some advice for people listening to this, of, maybe their perspective is, I'm not getting the results that I want out of training, or I'm not so sure about the training, kind of however you want to take it. Like what would be kind of like your, just here's my best tip for you right now if you're listening to this?
Say take a step back from what you're doing, right? If you're not seeing the impact from training, or you're having an off month, week, you're not selling anything, or not feel like you're not doing a great job, take a step back, look at yourself, and don't be afraid to ask for help, right? Whether you're the service manager, whether you're the technician, go to your service manager, go to the owner and say, hey, I need some more coaching and training. Hey, I need some help in this area, right? And just ask. It doesn't hurt to ask. And if you're able to get it, it's only going to help and benefit you.
I like that. That's good, Zach. Lewis?
I'm going to use the old cliche, stick to the process. And I'll elaborate on that. Like it doesn't happen overnight. It does take time. It does take a lot of practice. It's not a one and done, go to a training and I'm $1 million tech. Just commit to the fact that I'm going to give this 6 months. I'm going to give this a year. I'm going to give this 2 years. Talk to $2 million techs. Man, I've been trying to perfect this for like 4 years to get to this level. So it just takes time to not get frustrated and find a way to stack up small wins. So take those bite-sized chunks. Like I've got the call ahead down. Cool. That's great. What's next? Inch by inch, you'll start marching down the field way faster than just trying to sprint down to the other end.
Beautiful. Good stuff, guys. Thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for listening to the Trusted Technician Podcast. If you would like to learn more about SBE, you can find us online at sbeodyssey.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we would appreciate it if you would leave us a review. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.